Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jonathan Kapstein. I'm interviewing Liliane Coucke Smith on October 17th, 2015. Liliane has just celebrated her 95th birthday, and we're very happy to be here with her in Connecticut. Liliane, in 1940, where were you and what were you doing? Where were you living and what were you doing at the time?
I was living in Brussels and I was a student at the School of Nursing of Hôpital Saint-Pierre, attached to the University of Brussels. I was in my second year of training in 1940.
And was there a sense when the Germans invaded that something had to be done, no matter how small or how... At what point did you begin to feel that there was a need to resist?
Personally, almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I had been brought up after the First World War with the stories of all the horrible things that had happened during the 4 years of occupation by the Germans, when Belgium was fully occupied except for a small area on the western side.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I would have to be careful in everything I said and did from then on.
Hmm. You had some friends who early on became active, and one of them was arrested very early. Do I remember correctly that one was your fiancé?
Yes.
Tell us about him and what happened
He
to
was
him.
a student at Brussels University. He was in law school. He was a third-year student, and he was very active, and I don't know what he did. But I know that he was busy traveling around Belgium and doing whatever.
Yeah.
I was aware of it.
And how was he arrested? Was he betrayed? Was he caught in a sweep?
He was betrayed. We found out after the arrest that he had been betrayed by one of his colleagues who had been arrested by the Gestapo and forced to talk. And but we only found that out much later, after the war was over.
What was his name?
His name was Jacques Letten.
And were you associated in his ring or his circle of resistance at the time?
No, I was not. I was busy being a student at the school at the time. And I would have done whatever was necessary, such as carrying papers from one place to the other, but I was not very much involved.
I'm told that you did carry some papers,
Yes,
but also, yeah, tell us about that.
I did carry some papers, and one time I carried part of a printing press, because you couldn't move the whole thing in one piece, so different people carried parts from one place to the other. And as a matter of fact, a kind German helped me up on the streetcar because it was quite heavy.
With part of a printing press?
Yeah.
To print clandestine anti-German
that's right.
newsletters.
Yeah.
Excellent. The time, this would have been what, about 1943, 44?
No, this was 1942.
As early as that?
As early as that. That evening, there was a student cafe in Brussels. Do you want the location?
Sure.
Rue du Baudet, which is the other Port de Namur, where we usually met with friends. And that evening, he told me that he was going to be in Ghent. That's the only thing I knew. And another friend and I went to the Baudet, and lo and behold, Jacques appeared. His appointment had been cancelled, and about 15 minutes after he got there, the German Secret Service came in and arrested him and my other friend. And they did not arrest me, but they held me there until about 5:30 in the morning. And then I walked back to the hospital from there, and advised some friends I knew were in the resistance that he had been arrested. I was at that time asked to join the Communist Party, which I refused to do. And from then on, I was kept away from all the people I knew were in the resistance.
You went.
Right, for fear that you might be under surveillance.
I might be under surveillance.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
You
yeah.
went with his grandmother to empty his apartment.
Yes,
Well,
after
tell us
his
about
arrest,
that. Yeah.
I went with his grandmother to an apartment that he had in town, and it was kind of difficult because the old lady didn't believe I did not know where the apartment was. So at first she claimed she didn't know anything about it. And I said, this is very important. I don't know what he has or if he has anything, but we have to go and look. We finally went and left after curfew time to the apartment and found masses and masses of paper. There was no way of burning them because it would have made smoke, so we just took the paper, tore them up and stuffed them in the, what do you call that, the
Poubelle?
in the street, in the...
Oh, in the grating, yeah, sewer grating.
The sewer grate, yes.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And it took us quite some time, and then he had another place in town, which I knew, and we went and cleaned that up too. And then we waited. I received one letter from the Braindonk camp, but that was in the late July or early August.
Of what year?
And after 1942.
1942.
And after that, I never heard anything except at one time some man came to us who said he had been a forced worker in Germany and was in the same camp as Jacques, and he would carry a package back for him. And I called my mother, who immediately baked the bread for him, and I got some clothes from the house, from his house, gave it to the man. Well, it turned out that it was a scam, and
Oh, dear.
he never got anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never got anything. By that time, he probably was dead already. His mother found out after the liberation, through the Red Cross, she was able to get information that he had died in a camp in Austria in November of 1942, at the camp of Gusen-Linz. The Linz in Austria was a center town, but they had about 17 camps, different camps around it. And the paper related that he had died of pneumonia, which was meant to be that he had been in the experiments where they put you in tubs full of ice and see how long you can resist. They were trying to figure out how long the flyers could resist if they dropped over the Atlantic, how long they could resist.
How long they could survive in the cold water.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my.
But I only found that out in June of 1945. At that time, I was working as a nurse in a camp in Germany, and a friend sent me the information.
My. Tell me, what was your reaction? It was an obvious one, but when did you learn and how did you learn that the...
I received a letter from a friend of mine saying, by now you must know that Jacques died at such and such time. And I did not know. I had no idea. I had worked for the Red Cross as a volunteer after his arrest. And after the liberation, I heard that the Red Cross was going to send teams to Germany to try to repatriate some of our prisoners. So I registered for that, but then the Battle of the Bulge arrived, and the military authorities didn't want to send any more civilians to Germany, and it was in March of 1945 that I met one of my former classmates who was going to register for UNRRA, United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, and go and work in the displaced persons camps in Germany. And I thought this was a way for me to get to Germany. However, I didn't speak any English, but she said, come anyway. And lo and behold, they accepted me, and I left for a training camp in Brittany, in Jugoville, Germany, where I spent almost a month before going to Germany, to the camps.
Mm-hmm. And you learned English in that time?
I learned English very rapidly after being... we were asked when we got to the camp if we wanted to go in the American zone of Germany, the French zone of Germany, or the English zone of Germany. And I thought, there's no point my going to France, the French zone, because I speak French already, but if I go to an American or English zone, we may learn English. And I went to the American zone, and I learned English very rapidly.
Excellent English, too.
Pardon me?
Would you learn Army English or formal English?
Well, I tried. It was not easy at first. It was a very amusing to people when I made a mistake.
Yeah, yeah. And what were your assignments with UNRRA?
We first arrived in Koblenz,
Mm-hmm.
which was a transit camp, people who were going to be sorted out and...
These are displaced persons.
Displaced persons, yes.
Survivors of concentration camps,
and
refugees.
forced labours and forced deportation, because many countries from the Sudetenland, for instance, had been deported from one place to the other and either could not or would not go back to their country. If my memory is correct, there were about 10 million displaced persons in Germany at the time, which was very bad because there was no way of transporting them. The roads had been bombed, the bridges had been bombed out. Germany was in a very sad shape. Mm-hmm. And so we had to put them in camps in order to feed them, sort them out and decide what to do. The first camp I was assigned to was in Hanau, near Frankfurt am Main, in the western part. And that was a camp of Russian prisoners.
Interesting.
And there was a big problem with that camp. There were two big problems. One was alcoholism. Mm-hmm. The Russians would drink themselves to death, and I really mean to death. There were corpses floating on the river every day. Mm-hmm. And the second problem was that they did not want to go back to Russia, many of them, because having been taken prisoners by the Germans automatically meant that they were traitors, and they feared for their lives. However, the Allies had made an agreement with the Russians that they would be sent back. So the Americans felt bound to respect this agreement.
Tell us about the first time you encountered British and American forces.
But we encountered the British as they came in the evening of the 3rd of September 1944, but I was still working at my Red Cross station, and I hadn't gone downtown. I understand most of what was happening downtown. So on Sunday afternoon, I finally requested permission to go downtown and see what was happening. And I walked down to Boulevard Anspach, which was just full of people, everybody chanting and being happy. And at one point, a friend pointed to two tall guys, real Bill Malden types, with still brushes in their helmets and their rifle hanging down and licking an ice cream cone. And everybody said, "Do you see the Americans across the street?" They were the first two Americans who had come in, obviously, apparently.
Oh, good.
And the first Jeep.
And the first Jeep you saw?
The first Jeep, that was the evening of the 3rd. As they, but I didn't know it was a Jeep, and as they went away, I thought, my goodness, they think they're going to win the war with that? It looked so broken down and in miserable shape.
That's funny.
And that was a Jeep. I found out afterwards.
And then you went from there to Wetzlar, Germany, is that correct?
Where are we now? We're still in Belgium. In Belgium, then, after the liberation,
Yeah.
the British evacuated one of the hospitals, Institut Bordet, which had been requisitioned by the Germans, and transferred the Germans to the military hospital on Avenue de la Couronne. And then I was asked to work for the British hospital there as a volunteer, and I did for almost until about Christmas time, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started learning English. I had to.
Yeah.
And I remember the people coming from the Battle of Arnhem.
Mm-hmm.
We had many wounded coming from that battle. I also remember the difference between the attitude of the patients, whereas the British were very calm and collected and quiet, easy. The Americans were not at all happy about having been wounded. And I remember one time arriving in the room of a big, tall, black American guy, and he wanted something and I couldn't understand, so I went to the orderly and I said, "There is a man in that room who needs help and I don't understand what he wants." And I said, "There's an American there." He said, "Well, how do you know he's an American?" I said, "Because I do not understand him." And he told me, "We don't understand him either, you know."
Oh, dear.
Lady Mountbatten came to visit on 2 occasions, and then years later, I met her again when I was in Italy, in Naples, and she came, she accompanied Admiral Mountbatten when the British fleet came to visit.
Right. Jumping back to where we were before, talking about your arrival and beginning your work with displaced persons.
Yes.
That was in the American zone in Germany?
That was in the first camp was Koblenz.
Mm-hmm.
And the second, we only stayed there a few days because that camp was evacuated very rapidly. Then we went to Hanau, to that Russian and Ukrainian camp, which was then evacuated, and we were sent to Wetzlar, also in the American zone of Germany. And there was a Polish camp there at the time. And that's where I started working. We started, getting people coming in and establishing an infirmary and later on a hospital in what used to be the American, the German Officers Club, because these camps were mostly housed in barracks, former barracks, which had to be equipped to accommodate the families. Although there were very few children there, there were families. We had about 5,000 people there.
And you were working both as a nurse and as an administrator?
as an administrator and you know, inspecting, organizing facilities for babies, for small children, for organizing the hospital, staffing it, finding the staff. The staff was found mostly among the refugees themselves, the displaced persons themselves. And in case of emergency, we got help from the Americans. The Americans were very much present there, furnishing medicine and other supplies, arranging the supplies for the camp. Everything came from the American Military Commandment, headquarters there.
You mentioned earlier the arrest and torture and death of your fiancé.
Yes.
Tell us about being flown back by the Americans to testify at the trial of the man who betrayed him.
That happened in the summer, probably July or August. They had found out what had happened, how he got to be arrested, and they flew me back because there was no way of getting me back to Belgium unless they flew me back in a Piper Cub.
An American Army Air Force Piper Cub.
That's right.
What did you do? Go out to the airport and say, "I need a ride," or were there?
No. I was told I was given special papers, and I was taken to the airport there by the UNRRA people, and I was told to get in the Piper Cub, and I was told that if I got the plane dirty, I had to clean it. And it was of course, he was a young man. They were all young men at the time. We took great delight in zooming down and up and down. Do you want to see this church? You want to see this town? Anyway, he got me there, and then I went and testified, and they flew me back after a couple of days.
Did you actually manage to confront the...
No.
No,
No,
not
I never saw him. I
never saw him. Yeah.
I never was confronted.
Yeah.
They just wanted my testimony, and I told them what I told you. That
Last night at dinner you mentioned also your first encounter with American black soldiers and American cultural segregation at the time. Tell us about the time you picked up the hitchhiker.
I had been picking up hitchhikers since I had transportation. There was no transportation in Germany, and one time I picked up a not so young black man, small, and he got in the Jeep and decided, I told him where I was going. I would drop him off there, and he was very forceful in thanking me profusely for what the kind act I was doing, and what a fine lady I was, and I was very surprised because I hadn't done anything special I wouldn't have done for anybody else. And as he left, he told me, "You are a fine lady, and I will pray for you for the rest of my life." And I think he has. However, the reaction from my white American friends was they were horrified. They thought I should never do a thing like that. It was dangerous, and I didn't know those people. And I said, "Look, he's a soldier in uniform, you know. How am I going to say no? And I have a right, and he doesn't."
Yeah.
But they could not understand, nor could I understand their attitude, because the few soldiers I had met had been very nice, and I couldn't see any difference between the black and the white.
Right.
Because I had never seen a black man before. So.
Interesting. How long were you at that assignment?
I was in Germany until August 19... Wait a minute, when did I get 50? But because of the Korean War, they decided to close the camps in Germany, and they sent me to Naples, Italy, where they had an embarkation camp, and a serious problem with children's disease especially, because the International Refugee Organization at the time had taken over from UNRRA, and they were chartering boats to take these people to Australia and Canada. People who went to America went from Hamburg, Germany. The people who went to Australia and Canada went from Naples and another port in northern Italy, which was closed shortly thereafter. I can't remember the name of it, it will come back later. And there I had to organize inspection teams to go and check on all the children, check on their vaccination. If any child was found lying in bed at 10 o'clock in the morning, got a thermometer stuck in his mouth, and you know, so that we could stop any infectious children disease, and we would be able to fill our boats as we had.
I've heard it said that nobody in your care died.
No, that's right. As far as I know, nobody did, no.
Oh, that's great.
And we also got in touch with Italian hospitals to have operations performed that couldn't be done in the camp itself, because the camp itself only had an infirmary. But it was mostly detecting illness, providing eyeglasses for people who couldn't see, because vaccinating them.
Yeah, yeah. I seem to remember too that a New York taxi driver once recognized you and thanked you for saving his life. Would you tell us about that?
We were coming back from Belgium. It was in a cold, snowy winter evening, and by the time, for some reason, we were held up in customs or something. By the time we left, there were no cabs left. We waited. Finally, this almost broken down old cab came and stopped by us, and we had to get our luggage in the car. The man was in very bad mood because he had to, I think half of his household was in the trunk of the car. Anyway, the traffic was horrendous, and we started talking. And as we started talking, he talked about President Truman and what a great man President Truman was, and now he had made it possible for him, a refugee in a camp in Germany, to get to America, and asked him what camp he was in, and he was in a camp, Leipheim, a camp situated between Frankfurt and Wiesbaden at the time I was there. So it is quite possible that I gave him a few of his vaccine shots and whatever he had to. Anyway, he stopped being the grumpy old man. As we got out of the car, he came around, opened the door for me, and as I got up, he took me in his arms and he said, "Thank you. Thank you for saving my life." I was very touched. Shortly thereafter, there was an article about him in the New York Times. One of the, you know, he had done, what, 25 years of cab driving in New York. And sure enough, it was Stan Goldstein. So
Fascinating times.
We got back in touch with him.
You have in front of you a magazine. Show us the photo and tell us what's going on.
This is the picture of a young woman called Anne Gerlin.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
She was walking down the street, a very busy street. If you see right behind her, there's a German soldier. What you can't see is that in her shoe, she had the address of 2 Jewish children she was going to go pick up and bring to a safe place. I had the pleasure of meeting this young woman a couple of years ago, and the reception she got from her children and their family was very moving, very moving.
Very nice. Did she move to the United States?
No, she did not. She came from Belgium. She's still in Belgium.
Oh, we'll look her up. Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. These must have been very difficult times in 1943 and 44 and 45. Yes. Did you get the feeling that the war, before the Allies landed, that the war would ever end, that the Germans would be defeated? Were there any really low points?
We knew.
Mm-hmm. Here we are back with Liliane Smith talking about the final days of World War II in Belgium. What was the attitude in Belgium generally when the Battle of the Bulge broke out, with that major German counterattack? How did people feel about that? How worried were they?
They were very worried. We were very worried about that. Mm-hmm. It has been after the defeat at Arnhem. This came totally unexpected, and we knew that the moving men and supplies in the very bad weather that we had was extremely dangerous. I can't tell you how worried we were. It's just.
And this is December 1945.
That is correct.
Yeah, and then shortly thereafter, 44. Thank you, December 44. And then shortly after that, Patton counterattacked from the south, and the airborne troops held at Bastogne.
Yes, but it lasted quite a while before the counterattack could begin, and the supplies were not there. The troops were still in their summer uniforms, mm-hmm. and the winter was bitter, bitter cold, and a lot of snow. It was very difficult. Resupplying them was extremely difficult because of the condition of the roads. The first week of after the attack, the Allies could not answer because of the fog. The Germans had a better meteorologic system than the Allies, and they knew that they were going to have 1 week of unimpaired bad weather, fog, so the planes couldn't take off from England. And that 1 week was lost, really, to the Allies. They could not counterattack immediately.
And then there was the famous siege at Bastogne with General McAuliffe and his reply.
We heard about that almost, I would say, almost probably the same day it happened, and it was such a shock of joy when we heard that the Americans were really fighting, going to fight, and again back against the Germans. It gave us immense joy, really. And they still today, at the time of the battle, distributing nuts to the children in the schools of Bastogne in memory of the famous reply by General McAuliffe.
To the surrender demand, to which he replied nuts.
He replied nuts. Yeah. He thought the Germans were coming to surrender, and he was ready to accept the surrender. And he asked the interpreter, what are they saying? And the interpreter said, they want you to surrender, General. Now, General McAuliffe was cut off from all communication, and I believe he may not have had the full authority to answer such questions, but he had no way of doing it. He had no way of contacting his superior officer. So and he said, nuts. And finally, he had to give the reply, and he turned to his aide.
And he wrote, and he said, nuts.
And,
tell him nuts.
He said, what shall I do? And the aide said, it seems the reply you gave was very good, General. And so McAuliffe said nuts and sent it to the Germans, who were puzzled by the answer.
And then once they were pushed back, I understand that you were assigned to Germany even before the war was over, to Allied...
No, I was not assigned. I had tried to join the Red Cross in order to accompany the teams who were going to go and try to find our prisoners and all the men who were missing from... but because of the Battle of the Bulge, all these expeditions were stopped. And so it's only early in March that I found out about UNRRA, United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, and I enlisted and they took me in.
Before the end of the war.
Before, yes, of course,
Yeah.
early March.
Yeah. So you were already on German soil, even though the war wasn't over?
No, I was not.
Oh, you were not? Yeah.
Before we went to Germany, we were sent to a training camp in Normandy to be instructed as what we were going to find over there and what we were going to be doing. But it was not very effective since nobody knew what we were going to find or what we would be doing. Nevertheless, we waited for permission to leave the Genouville, Granville in Normandy, and then took up team by team. We had our instructions to go to Germany, and our first stop was Koblenz. And in Koblenz that camp was dissolved very rapidly because they were mostly people who came from France and from the neighborhood, after which we were sent to Hanau near Höchst. Höchst was a place of many factories and important installations from the military. And there was a camp of Russian and Ukrainians mostly.
Right, we covered that.
We were there first, but because of an accord between the Allies and Russia, we were obliged to repatriate these people to Russia, send them back to Russia, and they were unwilling to go. We had some very sad happenings, people committing suicide, breaking the windows of the train and cutting their throats, so that it was decided that we would not honor this order anymore, and the camp was, and people were eventually transferred to another camp, at which point I went on to Wetzlar and started in a Polish camp there, a large Polish camp. There were 5,000 people there, I believe. And that's where the picture was taken.
Yeah. And you spent 5 years with
from Wetzlar, I cannot remember the dates exactly, but I was in Wetzlar at the time when that camp, it was a Polish camp, was evacuated to receive the Jews who had been returned to Germany from Siberia by the Russians. The Russians decided to return all the Jews who had escaped during the war. I think there were 300,000 of them, and which created a great problem because we were not equipped to house or receive them. So we could not mix the Jews and the Poles together because of political reasons. So we had to evacuate the Poles, who were sent to different other camps, and received the Jewish population came from Siberia. And I spent several months in Wetzlar, and then was sent to, Marburg, further up north, to another Jewish camp where I spent the winter. And from Marburg, I was sent down to Leipheim, near Ulm in southern Germany, and in another Jewish camp. And every time we set up a new camp, we had to reorganize all the sanitary facilities and resupply, and open up the baby clinics and what have you. So it was starting over and over and over again.
Speaking of babies, I understand that you saved, when Kitty was arrested, you saved her child. Will you tell us that story?
My friend Kitty, my friend Alec Gerbeau had been arrested in around, I think, April or May of 1944, and his wife was arrested early in August. When she was arrested, she asked that her baby, who was 2 years old, was going to be left in the house, and she asked if she could call a relative or a friend to come and look after him. And the German's reply was, "Oh, don't worry, the child will cry and some neighbor will come around to see what's happening." And so I got a telephone call from a neighbor, and I went immediately to go and pick up the baby and contacted his grandfather, who lived in Liège, near Liège, and but the baby was with me for a couple of days. The baby was about a little over 2 years old.
Mm-hmm. And did Alex and Kitty survive the war?
They both survived the war. Kitty was released about shortly after the liberation of Paris, the day after, I think, around 26th of August. And Alec was on a train that was sent to Germany, but the resistance kept blowing up the tracks before the train, in front of the train, and as the train tried to back out, they would blow the trucks behind. So eventually the doors were opened, the Germans fled one way, and the prisoners fled the other way, and he eventually made his way back to Brussels. So he was there on the 3rd of September.
I understand your then prospective mother-in-law wasn't pleased to see you with the baby in your arms.
My prospective grandmother-in-law, my
grandmother-in-law
was down there. She saw me with the baby, and she said, "Oh, that woman has a child." And we explained, no, that she was not my child, baby. But it took her some time to absorb the idea.
Oh my. Well, Liliane, thank you very much for your time and your memories, and I must say you've spent a fascinating and impressive life and contributed to humanity. So congratulations, with great affection. We have great affection.
A very fulfilling life, because we really had a feeling we were doing something useful and helping people, which is the greatest kind of thing you can do anyway.
Well, this interview is a project of the American ambassador to Belgium, Denise Power, the public affairs officer, Elizabeth Keefe, and several others, and several Belgian participants, including, I think, the mayor of Bastogne. And it's designed to honor women who contributed to the war effort, who were in the days, have not, I wouldn't say they've been ignored, but haven't received their just due from history. So thank you very much for your contribution.
When Sam Goldstein put his arms around me, I felt I was well repaid for everything I might have done. It was a fascinating experience.
Wonderful. And you ended up marrying an American naval officer.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Thank you.